Welcome back to Hot Rod Guy Garage. This is going to be another episode on a 66 Mustang budget drag car build. So follow me along through the intro and I'll be back. So alright guys, it's been another week since you've seen the video, and this one's just going to be kind of a bonus video. I was not going to video me installing this fiberglass one-piece front end on the 66 because I personally never done something like this before. So I needed some time and many days to kind of figure out what I was doing. I knew I wanted a flip forward front end like a 60s car or a gasser, AFX car, you know, something like that. I just didn't want something that's going to take two people to set the front end off the car. So I'm going to flip around. I'm going to show you where I'm at. I'm going to share some helpful tips that some of you may find useful in the future. So I bought this one-piece front end off Marketplace. It is in pretty poor shape. It is brand new and never been mounted, but it's in pretty poor shape because it has been stored improperly. And it has some damages and some ugly things going on, you know. Some spider cracks in the gel coat and all that stuff. But as you can see, we have some very, very bad body lines and some things. And I've got the front end mounted, but what I wanted to bring y'all in here for was if you're going to install something with fiberglass and you don't want to use a conventional hood pin, you know, your old pin right here, you know, you drill a hole and this bolts in and sticks through, you know, then you got a pin or a hairpin clip similar to this, and it goes in your pin, flips over. You cannot get a one-piece fiberglass front end to flip forward with a pin, and then, you know, a pin and a pin over there, because it's going to take two people to deal with this stuff. So what I've been messing with, I ordered these Dzus fasteners from our friends over at Summit Racing. These are the ones I'd ordered right here, and these right here. Now, I've never messed with these either. I generally went to this because I'm pretty old school in the way I do stuff, and you know, this is a tried and true method, and you know, all you gotta do is drill a hole, you know, and then, you know, slip, poop, clip, done. Right. Well, these are a little more fiddly than that. As you can see, I've got four of them in across through here, across the hood. I had to put four because this hood was perfectly flat where it's been stored, and these cars have a bow in the hood. So with fiberglass stuff like this, you're never going to get it perfect, but you can get it pretty darn close. And we'll get into how I hinge the front here in a little while, but I really wanted to bring y'all in here for these Dzus fasteners because I've watched a bunch of videos on them, and to be honest, I really didn't learn nothing from it other than basic, you know, you line this up with that. Nobody showed you how to line this up with this. And of course you can measure it all out, but if, you know, sometimes your measurements get a little off, maybe you might drill a hole a little bit off. You don't have a lot of leeway in this plate to make big mistakes. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to show you how to install these the way I did. May not be right to some people, but so far all four of these have went in with little to no problem. I did have some issues with the fiberglass being inconsistently thick. This is a race weight front end, so it is thin in spots and thick in spots. Where it's thin, this setup works perfect. Your normal fiberglass hood, these plates and buttons will work great. However, like I said, this front end is very inconsistent in thickness, so the normal way of trying to measure this for the height of the fiberglass and all that stuff doesn't necessarily work. So let me flip it around, and I'll show you how I've done these four, and we'll go from there. Since this fiberglass is so inconsistent in thickness, even from 1 inch to the other, the way I done these was I literally laid these tabs up here on the hood and buttoned them up against the cowl. And then I come in here with a paint marker and I marked the edges like this. That gives me, I know I can't go forward or reverse past those 2 points. And the next thing is, how you gonna figure out where this goes? This is something nobody really shows you other than measuring from here to here. And I'm gonna have to do some serious fitting on this fiberglass because it's not great. And I'm also trying to pull it up where it fits decently. So what I'm doing, I'll butt this plate up against here because we're gonna weld it to the cowl. And I'll go in here and find the center point of my spring, and I'll just take a Sharpie marker and I'll just put a dot, just like that. And that's where our hole's gonna be for this button to pass through. When this is welded flush up against here. So, hopefully that makes it a little easier for you guys. And on the other side, I'm just gonna do the same thing. I can see my mark on the other side, and you can see this one's a little proud over here of the cowl, where the other was a little below. So we're gonna have to use this fastener to push this down. So what I'm gonna do, I'm just gonna mark my margins with a paint pen, just like I did before on the other side. And since this one's a little proud, I'm gonna have to, instead of button it up, I'm gonna have to kind of eyeball where the edge of the cowl is. And don't worry, there is a little margin for error doing it this way, and it'll still work. So I'm just gonna mark my center point, and center point's gonna be the center of this spring in here. Now these are already assembled. They sell these where they're just plates, and then you have to rivet these springs on there because there's different heights of these springs for different panel thicknesses. There is also a way to adjust this, and I'll show you later in this video. You're not going to get a whole lot of adjustment out of it, but you can tweak it just a little bit if you need just a little bit. So I've got these two tabs marked on both sides where they're going to go. So let's get this front end back open and we'll go from there. So in order to figure out how low I need to mount these, what I'm going to do, I'm just going to take a micrometer and I'm just going to measure the thickness of the fiberglass at that point. Now we're not down here on the bottom, but I can't show you up there at the top because, you know, it's way up there. And my stand only goes so far. So I'm going to measure fiberglass. And what I'm going to do, once I get the thickness of fiberglass, I'm going to take it, I'm going to lock this down. And that will let us use this end of the micrometer. And what we're going to do, we're going to take that end of that micrometer, and when we go to weld our plate, I'm going to take and use this, the flat part right here, and set that on the cowl edge. And I'm going to take the pointed part and butt it up to our plate right here. And that should give us a flush mounted piece of fiberglass, something like that. That's how I done it across the cowl. It's pretty darn close. So, like I said before, this stuff's not going to fit perfect, guys, because it is inconsistently thick fiberglass. And matter of 100 thousandths, it could change thickness drastically. So, that's also important to note. Sometimes you will have to grind on the fiberglass to get the consistent thickness. And that's important because, you know, these things don't have a lot of give once you get them down in there and twist them. So you want to take the due diligence to make sure that you can even this fiberglass out, if you have to the best of your ability. And as you can see up there, there's them 4 spots for these 4 tabs on the cowl. I ground them down to a consistent thickness until the buttons fit good and snug and weren't loose. And I used our friend the flat disc to do so. So let's get to mounting these tabs, and I'll come back here in a moment when it's time to drill holes for the buttons and the fiberglass. That is really important also. You just can't blow a hole in there because the bottom of those buttons are tapered. So you need to make a tapered hole. You see the taper right there. And you don't have much give on either side of that taper. So they gotta be pretty darn exact. So let's see where we get. All right, so we got our tabs mounted. So before I set this front end back down, I'm gonna go ahead and drill the holes for the thing, for the fastener itself, not the thing. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna drill my initial hole with a regular drill bit. I'm gonna follow it with a step bit that goes up to a 1/2 inch. That's an important measurement right there, because about the flare of that button is about 9/16, a little over. So I'm going to use yet, on our last step, I'm going to use 3 different bits. On our last step, I'm going to use this step bit right here. And I do believe, yep, it is 9/16 is our final stop. And I'll come up on the 5/8 just a little bit to give it a little taper to the fiberglass. So let's get these holes drilled. We'll sit this down. We'll see how things fit up. Alright, and here's where you're going to run into issue with, like I said, fiberglass front end. I put 2 of these buttons in on each side, and they should go in something like this with little to no effort. And they should sit flush. So what you do, you're going to look down your hole, you're going to see where your spring is. You're going to drop your button down in there. And this button will almost catch. And I mean almost, you can feel it touch. But it's not quite deep enough to hit. So I've come up with a couple of tricks, and one of them is grinding the fiberglass a little bit in the area of the tab. But I've got yet another trick, so I'll show that to you here in just a moment. And trick number 1 is I'm going to take a pair of pliers or something like my Fairmont tongs right here. And I'm just going to go up under this plate right here and grab this spring and just kind of collapse it just a touch. And what that'll do is bring that spring up closer to that plate. You can also use these if you need to change the angle to bend this up or down. But I figured out if you just take and just kind of relax that spring just a touch, most of the time it'll get you right in the ballpark of where you need to be. Assuming the fiberglass is consistently thick. So it's not going to hurt anything to do that, but it will bring it up a 1/16 of an inch or so without getting into really bending it. Sometimes you just need that little bitty bit. On the driver's side, I believe that'll work. On the passenger side, the fiberglass is much thicker right in the middle of that plate than it is on the other edge. To the point it's actually holding it up above the cowl, even though I measured it. I must have just caught it right on the side of, a thick and a thin spot. So that means I'm going to have to go in here with the flap disc. I'm going to have to reduce the thickness of that fiberglass just a touch. And this is going to be a multiple, up and down, up and park thing. Pretty much that's what it's been this whole time. And I wasn't going to make a video like I said, but I decided maybe this will help somebody that, is venturing off into, a modern style fastener. And when I say modern, they were using these in the late 70s to the 80s all the way to current. But hood pins have been used since the 50s and 60s, and, they're easier and cheaper to get just about everywhere. So let me sit this thing down, fit all this stuff up, and see where we're at. So I got them in there. They're still just a touch tight, but they do lock in and very snug. And our cowl is about 80% flush. It's a little low here and a little high here, but there's not a whole lot you can do about it because, it's fiberglass. I have to work some of this out in the bodywork phase. But I'm going to tweak on this just a little bit more. I would like it just a touch looser, because these pins are made out of aluminum and they will wear some over time, but I don't want it to, damage this and this stuff to come loose. So I'm just going to give these another little squeeze with my Fairmont pliers, on both sides and raise these clips just a touch more. And then I'll be able to call these two good, this one and the other one. Anybody's curious, this is the Moroso tool for this. They sell several different styles. This one seems like it'll be easier to keep up with, so I just bought the Moroso one. And when you get to the point, you want these buttons to be flush. You don't want any kind of spring in them. I need to do a little adjust on this one. You can see I can wiggle this plate. You don't want that plate to wiggle. You want it where it's snug when it's locked down. So, like that, right there. Just locks right in. No fuss, no muss. I want to tighten this one up. I want to go in there on the bottom side of that spring and use a screwdriver to kind of just stretch it back out where I'd collapsed it slightly. But when you're going to do these, and I'm at the point I'm going to go ahead and mount these up here before I move to the bottoms of the fenders. What I'm going to do with them loose, I'm just going to line them up the direction I want them to go. And then I'm going to go in here, and this will take a lot of the fiddly out of it. I'm just going to line these things up right here. And I'm going to go over there and I'm going to get a small drill bit. And I'm going to go ahead and drill these holes because these will rivet to the fiberglass. So I'm just going to make sure all my tabs are straight. I say tabs, these little flanges are straight. We'll drill them. We'll put a couple rivets in all of them up here. Because I don't see the need for more than 6 of them up here. 6 is kind of overkill for this. Could add one here if it needed held down up in this area. But when you hold this down, our door gap is pretty decent. So 2 down here at the bottom should be sufficient down there, along with these up here at the cowl. That side over there, like I said, it's a little proud, but we'll address that in the bodywork phase, along with, you know, some of this inconsistent gap that we have. It's going to have some sanding done and some more fitting things, but that's later on. We've got some big old giant mold lines here that, you know, they're as thick as that. So hopefully this video will help somebody out that don't quite understand the whole premise of installing these things. The same could be done for a rail. These things come on a rail too. Say you just want a fiberglass hood and you got steel fenders. They come, you can buy a rail that fit most cars or a universal rail, rivet it to your fenders, and then you could do the hood the same way, but you're going to need to sit the hood on the car and kind of get it to fit the hole that you need. Then you could lay those plates up there, mark your hole centers, and, you know, do like I done and measure that edge, set your depth in several places as you go up, and rivet it on. So, like I said, hopefully this stuff will help somebody. Let's get these buttons mounted to the fiberglass itself, and then we can go a little further. Alright, so what I'm going to use, I've got an 1/8 inch drill bit here and a slow turning drill. I've got our Hardell rivet gun right here. I've done a review video on this a while back. This thing is super handy, guys. And we're going to use their aluminum rivets to install this. So, I'm just going to take it and I'm just going to drill our fiberglass slowly. Until I'm through. And we're not going to be able to rivet this with it sitting up against the plate because the rivet won't pass through. But what I'm going to do, I'm going to lift it up. I'm going to rivet it, and then we should be good. Big thing to note, guys, you do not want to use a long rivet. You want nothing that really protrudes from this side. These short aluminum rivets, they just leave a little bump on the back side while giving a nice clean look on the front side. I can't express that enough when riveting aluminum. You need to, if you're going to rivet something through aluminum, you need to make sure it protrudes all the way through the panel. If you're doing something like these plates, these button plates for these Dzus fasteners, you do not want it to protrude 100% through the fiberglass. It will swell out and pinch it into the fiberglass. All you're doing is trying to keep these from falling out. So we're not really worried about a structural type rivet in this situation. So let's get the rest of these done. So after you get it riveted, you're going to look something like this. And all these should be flush. There shouldn't be anything catches your hand. There shouldn't be anything rough on any of them. So hopefully, like I said, this will help somebody that may or may not, you know, have found anything helpful from everybody else's videos. These are the rivets I use. You can see they are very short. They're also the ones that come with that hard L rivet gun. Like I said, guys, I wouldn't make these review videos. I use this stuff in my shop and in the background before I even release these videos, to make sure that I'm not going to tell y'all about something that's complete garbage. This little hard L rivet gun is very handy. It is very ergonomic to use, and it does store all the little tails off your rivets inside its body over there. So next thing we need to do, and I'll throw all that away here in a minute, I need to get the bottom of this mounted. And probably what I'm going to do, I'm going to top the rocker in here, and I'm just going to put one in the back up here and one towards the front up here somewhere. Just two down here at the bottom, and that'll keep our door gap pretty decent all the way up. So just going to repeat the process that I done up here that I showed y'all already. We'll repeat this process, get those on there, and then I'll be back, guys, because there's no sense in me showing you this again. It's going to be the same process, just a little bit different down there, and I'll come back later and I'll show you exactly what I've done. But let's get the rest of this stuff mounted, and then I'll be back. Well, it's a little while later, and what I've done, I put that one tab there, and I put that other one down there on the lip. And what that does is keeps this fender from being floppy up here. However, I did go in here and grind some of these bad spots out and re-glassed them, because the last time I shut this thing, this button had kind of stuck, and I shoved this front end back, because once you shut it, you have to kind of push it back. And it caught that and busted the hood right here. So I ground that down, re-glassed all that, and got my rivet hole re-drilled. So I'll have to re-rivet this on there. But over here, I done it the same way. You can see it down there. This thing is good and solid. Not going to fall off or anything. So I come in here and I just sprayed some primer on them tabs on tops and bottoms. And I went and just dusted this whole cowl again. And where I ground on this up here, I just sprayed a little bit on it. Same with the hinge assembly. What I done here with the hinges, the hinge I made, I used some angle iron. I made a frame. It goes around through here. It's boxed in a couple places. And I took two pieces of steel tube that fit inside each other tight. Like you could turn it, but it had resistance. And I took and I greased them things real good, and that tube is run almost to the halfway point on each side. And I took and put it all together and welded it all up with the front end mocked up on the car through the grill opening. I didn't want anybody to replicate this because I don't know how good it's going to last or how good it's going to work. And I put a couple of chains on it, one there and one there, as kind of a safety, just in case, you know, this bolt that I welded on this tube broke. It'd keep it from smacking the ground or breaking off or breaking this whole thing in half. it is pretty sturdy. And I left it where I could adjust it here. But you got these threads off, but I can take it, I can move this bolt up these links if I don't want it to go straight vertical like it is. And I attached that at first with some self-tapping screws. I screwed the tabs to the front end, and then I went back in there later and drilled out and riveted all of it with a long rivet, steel rivet. And then I come in here and I glassed all the angle iron frame I made into the front end. So I ground all the gel coat off, laid glass, resin, and then I come in here and I just spray some primer on it when I sprayed this stuff. So it'll take it a little while to dull out, but it was the easiest way I could figure out how to make it work and still have, you know, a tilt front end that, you know, works. So, like I said, I didn't video making a hinge on it because I didn't know what I was doing. And I didn't know how I was going to go about it. I knew I did not want to build a whole steel frame inside this front end and make it heavier than, you know, a steel front end. But the more stuff you add to fiberglass, the heavier it's going to get. Kind of like in our door video when I was talking about them doors, by the time you add up everything, there's about 4 pounds difference. So I'm real close to this car being at a point where I can weigh it. I need to get an initial weight of what this car weighs at this point with the front end, the cage in it, and I've got the doors and the trunk lid and all that stuff back on it. So we're at the point, I've done it in the background, I didn't tell anybody, but I did weigh the 65 Mustang at this point. And the only difference between my car and his cars is fiberglass front end. Mine's got a cage, mine's got gutted doors and trunk, and of course all the suspension differences. So once I weigh them, I'll have a real good idea of have I been successful in keeping my car mindfully light. Going back to the hinge here for just a second, I've still got to mount it to the frame rails. I've just got 2 self-tapping screws on each side holding the whole hinge assembly on the car. So I'm going to go back in there and put some nut certs and stuff in it too. And another thing I should have to clarify that I probably should, I had to cut about 4 inches off the front of the frame rails to make this front end flip forward. Just because the way it's designed. I do not know who made this front end or where it come from, but it seems a little short up front, having to cut the frame rails. But I did cut, like I said, about 4 inches off the end of the frame. So I did weld another cross member in it too up there. So other than getting this thing on set scales and get some comparison weights, we are ready to mock up an engine and transmission this thing. And there's a poll, guys, on my community page. Make sure you go on there and vote. And if you want to see something different, let me know down in the comments below. But we have to work within a budget because this is a budget race car. So that said, guys, I'm going to leave this video here. So if you like these kind of videos, make sure you hit that like button, share them with your friends. If you're not a subscriber, hit that subscribe button. And I look forward to everybody's comments down below. So if you haven't yet, make sure you check out KentuckyMustang.com. There will be a link and a discount code down in the description below. And until the next one, guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you at the next one.